Okay, so you sent over this document, the summary of David DeAngelo's Attraction Isn't a Choice. Interesting title.
Yeah, definitely catches your eye.
Let's dive right in. The core idea seems to be that for women, attraction isn't really a conscious decision. It's more like an emotional response triggered by certain things.
Exactly. And it pushes back hard against that whole nice guy approach.
Yeah.
The idea that just being agreeable and attentive should logically lead to attraction.
Which, makes sense on the surface. The author, DeAngelo, even admits he used to think that way.
Well, yeah, it seems logical, right? Be kind, be considerate, offer help, give compliments. It feels like that should work. It's what we're often taught builds good relationships.
Totally. If you're doing all the quote-unquote right things, you'd expect attraction to follow.
But that's where his observations kicked in. He started seeing maybe a disconnect.
Yeah, he noticed the guys who were trying really hard to be nice weren't always, well, getting the girl, so to speak.
hmm And meanwhile, you have these other types, maybe the bad boys or whatever you want to call them.
Right, the ones maybe not playing by those nice rules.
They seem to be doing okay, sometimes even better. And he even mentions women sometimes feeling unsatisfied in relationships that are too nice, maybe lacking some spark.
Huh. It does make you think, doesn't it? Have you seen that kind of thing play out?
I mean, you see variations of it, yeah, in life, in movies.
Mm.
That charming rogue character often gets a lot of attention. It sort of begs the question, if niceness isn't the main driver, then what is?
Which brings us right back to that central phrase, attraction isn't a choice.
Exactly. The document argues pretty strongly that women don't sit down with a checklist like, okay, smart, check, funny, check, therefore I am attracted.
It's not presented as that kind of logical process at all.
No, it's framed as more automatic, unconscious maybe, an emotional reaction that just happens.
Like a reflex.
Sort of, yeah. And he contrasts it with how attraction might work more for men, suggesting men might be more initially driven by visual cues. Whereas for women, according to this text, it's these deeper emotional triggers.
But here's the kicker. He argues it's not random, even if it's unconscious. There's a kind of logic to it, like they're learnable techniques.
Yeah, that's the claim, that you can actually learn to trigger that unconscious response, which is a pretty bold statement.
He really is. And he backs it up by pointing to what he calls four obvious patterns.
Right. First, you see guys who aren't maybe conventionally supermodels, but they do well with women. Average-looking guys having success.
Okay, makes sense.
Second, the nicest guys, the ones who are just purely agreeable, often aren't seen as the most attractive.
The paradox we talked about.
Exactly. Third, the bad boy thing. Again, why do they often get attention, despite maybe not being ideal relationship material on paper?
Mm.
And fourth, just that feeling of being really drawn to someone, even if your logical brain is go, wait, why? Like, your attraction is sort of controlling you.
We've all probably felt that at some point, right? That pull you can't quite explain logically.
Absolutely. So he's using these patterns as sort of real-world evidence, saying, look, doesn't this suggest something else is going on besides just being polite?
It forces you to consider it, definitely. Have you noticed those patterns, maybe in media or just observing people?
You do see those dynamics. And to explain how learning these attraction principles might feel weird at first, he uses an analogy.
Oh, yes, the computer mouse.
The upside-down computer mouse, yeah.
Explain that one.
So the idea is, imagine trying to use your computer mouse, but it's flipped upside down. Everything feels wrong, counterintuitive, backward.
Okay, yeah, I can picture that. Frustrating.
Right. But he says if you practice enough, you could actually learn to use it that way. It would eventually become second nature.
So the analogy is that these attraction techniques might feel unnatural, even wrong, compared to the nice guy stuff.
Exactly. They might feel awkward at first. But the point is, they are learnable skills. And once you get proficient, the document claims you can see a positive response pretty quickly.
It's presented as something you can actually develop, a skill set.
Mm-hmm. Which leads into, okay, what are these skills? What behaviors actually spark this attraction, according to DeAngelo?
And he offers what he calls a magic formula.
Coco Y plus A-N-N-Y.
Right. Cocky plus funny. He's very clear, though. Just being cocky or arrogant, that's a turnoff.
Oh, totally. Straight up arrogance usually just reads as insecure, right? Like you're trying too hard to prove something.
But add humor to it.
That's the key. The document says arrogant humor that makes them laugh is a huge E turn-on. So think, like, playful teasing, banter. making fun of them a little, but in a way that's obviously joking and creates connection, not hurt feelings.
Like how you might joke around with your siblings or close friends, that kind of vibe.
Exactly. It's got to be lighthearted.
Yeah.
The humor makes the cocky part feel more like playful confidence, not actual arrogance. Psychologically, maybe it signals you're not intimidated, you have high self-worth, but you don't take yourself too seriously.
Okay, so that specific blend is important. And this connects to his next point about teasing early.
Yeah, he suggests doing this playful teasing, giving her a bit of a hard time right from the start.
Again, emphasizing playful, not mean.
Absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
The idea is it immediately communicates you're confident, you're comfortable, you don't feel like you need to walk on eggshells or constantly seek her approval.
It kind of flips the script from being super complimentary right away.
Right. It suggests you see her as an equal, you're not putting her on a pedestal immediately. It can create a bit of that playful tension, which the text argues is attractive.
And there's body language, confident body language.
Mm-hmm. Things like, standing up straight, good posture, moving deliberately, not all jerky and nervous.
Slow and confident movements, he says. And interestingly, not smiling or laughing too much.
Yeah, which sounds a bit counterintuitive, maybe. But the idea is that a constant, perhaps nervous smile might signal eagerness to please, whereas a more neutral, controlled expression, combined with good posture and steady eye contact.
It projects confidence, self-assuredness, maybe even a subtle sense of being in control.
That seems to be the interpretation presented. It's about non-verbally communicating that you're comfortable and possess your own value. You're not overly needy for external validation.
Okay. And building on that confident image, he also talks about what not to do, especially at the beginning.
And this is where it really clashes with traditional nice guy advice.
Like, don't immediately rush to buy her a drink.
Right. Don't shower her with compliments about her looks right off the bat.
Avoid acting needy, like you desperately need her attention or approval.
The core idea he puts forward is, initially, act like you are the prize, you are the catch.
So those nice gestures, like buying a drink, the argument is they can backfire early on.
Yeah, the text suggests they can be seen as trying to buy interest or affection, which can actually signal insecurity. Instead of showing genuine interest, it might accidentally communicate, I don't think I'm valuable enough on my own, so here's a drink.
So the advice is establish your own value first through how you act, how you interact.
Before resorting to gifts or excessive compliments. It's about being different from, perhaps, many other guys who might be constantly fawning over an attractive woman.
Be entertaining, but not a performing clown.
Confident, but not an insecure bully.
In control of yourself.
Exactly. It's a specific kind of self-assured persona for those first interactions.
Okay, but what about, actual relationships, long-term stuff? Is he saying be cocky and funny forever?
That's a really important question, and the document does address it. It actually says long-term relationships are wonderful and healthy.
So there's a distinction being made.
A crucial one. The argument is about mastering the initial attraction phase. The idea is if you can create that spark first, you're less likely to waste your time and energy investing in someone who isn't truly interested in you on that deeper level.
So get the attraction part handled first.
Before you start with the grand gestures or the deep relationship stuff. Because, according to this perspective, those nice things done before attraction is established can seem.
Like they have an ulterior motive. Like you're trying to trade niceness for attraction.
That seems to be the implication, that it can come across as needy or like you're trying to create an obligation.
And the text argues that relationships built on genuine personality connection, mutual enjoyment, those are stronger.
Stronger than ones maybe based on favors or gifts given too early, yeah. Which leads to that provocative question he poses.
Why do some nice women stay with jerks?
Yeah, and the answer provided in the text is pretty blunt. It's the attraction, not necessarily the commitment potential or how nice he is day to day.
So the idea isn't to be a jerk.
No, definitely not. It's about identifying what parts of that jerk or bad boy persona might be triggering attraction. Maybe the teasing, the confidence, the unpredictability, the cocky humor.
And learning to adopt those specific behaviors.
Yes, but without the actual negative, hurtful, or abusive parts. Take the attractive elements, leave the toxicity behind.
So it's about borrowing certain behavioral patterns associated with attraction, not becoming a bad person.
Exactly. And then, after that initial attraction is there, gifts and favors and niceness can play a different role.
How so?
They become like the spice rather than the main dish.
Yeah.
They can enhance the connection, show appreciation, deepen devotion, but they're not the thing you're relying on to create the attraction in the first place.
That makes sense. Build the foundation first, then add the extras.
Right. And there's one final warning, too. Don't become a wuss, his word, after you start liking someone.
Meaning don't suddenly become overly needy or clingy.
Yeah, maintain that self-assuredness. Don't start excessively texting or needing constant reassurance just because feelings are developing. Keep that core confidence.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the main takeaway from our dive into this DeAngelo summary is attraction, at least as presented here for women, isn't really about conscious choice.
Right. It's framed as an unconscious emotional response,
Yeah.
triggered by specific behaviors, confidence, cocky humor, teasing, certain body language cues.
And this stands in pretty stark contrast to the idea that just being the traditionally nice guy is the key.
It definitely challenges that assumption.
Yeah.
It suggests focusing on creating a specific emotional reaction first, rather than trying to logically convince someone or win them over purely with niceness, especially in those initial stages.
Which leads to a final thought, maybe something to chew on. If we consider this perspective that attraction might be less about logic and more about triggering emotions,
Mhm.
how might understanding that change how we interact generally? Not just in romance, but anytime we want to connect or influence someone. Is there a difference between trying to get someone to like you versus trying to evoke a specific feeling in them?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Something to definitely reflect on.